I'm Azealia, 34 years old. I reunited with Luke at a junior high school reunion, and after dating for a year, we got married. We now have 2 children, aged 4 and 2. After having children, our current apartment became too small, so we bought a newly built house that we had always dreamed of. Since Luke and I went to the same junior high school and our parents' houses are also very close, we built our house in the middle of both our parents' houses. At that time, I thought it would be easy to visit my in-laws on a day trip and leave my children at my parents' house even in case of an emergency. Above all, the unique scent of a new house filled me up. The hallway, bathroom, toilet, and layout were all new and spacious. I spent every day feeling fulfilled. However, I had no idea that the distance between our 2 parents' houses was the beginning of a tragedy. Just 1 week after moving into our newly built house, I started feeling uneasy. My in-laws came over saying they wanted to see their grandchildren. It was just for coffee at 3 p.m., and at first, it was fine. But their stay gradually got longer, and they started coming over not only on weekends but also on weekdays. Of course, they would want to talk to Luke, their son, on weekends. I was just feeling like I could do housework during that time. However, when they started coming over on weekdays, the conversation didn't continue. Especially with my father-in-law. My father-in-law's vocabulary consisted of only 3 words: yes, no, and I see. It was incredibly difficult to talk to him. I felt like I had to be careful unconsciously. On the other hand, my mother-in-law is a person who talks endlessly.
I think of Azealia as if she was my own daughter.
It's nice that she thinks of me as her own daughter, but...
Azealia, your lower belly is starting to stick out. When I was young, there was no dryer. It costs electricity, so put a bath towel under the laundry and dry it in the room.
She just says unnecessary things. I was increasingly worried about my father-in-law and overly interfered with by my mother-in-law. One day, the days of coming from morning and eating until noon and night began to increase.
Should I stay overnight?
A declaration of accommodation just 2 weeks after building a new house. What? But... when I tried to refute in a hurry...
It's okay. The house is close, so I can get my clothes right away.
I mean, that's not the point. It was Saturday, and Luke was there that day.
It's okay. You can stay as long as you like. It's okay to be lively.
He said something like that. This was already a fatal blow to me. While my father-in-law and mother-in-law were going home to get their clothes, I couldn't help but speak out to Luke. Hey. I would be troubled even if you were allowed to stay without permission. It's also hard to clean and be careful while taking care of children. Honestly, when I was tired, there were times when I wanted to let my 2 children play and lie down. But I can't do that when my father-in-law and mother-in-law are watching. Visiting in detail is a difficult and tiring thing. But Luke says,
They're parents, so they don't have to worry about cleaning or anything, right?
He says things like that.
Besides, my mother said, I think of you as if you were my own daughter.
I can't think of myself as a real parent just because they think so.
That's a problem with your perception. It's like Rubens' vase. It's a guy who sees exactly the same picture as a face or a vase. You need to come to terms with your feelings. It's not my mother and father's fault.
But the reality is that the burden of 2 people's meals and laundry is increasing for me. When I piled it up, Luke made a pose of a "oh well" with his hand as if to say it was noisy.
You've been doing it for 4 people until now, right? It's not a big deal if it's only 2 more. You're making a fuss about small things that are too hard.
He said that and started reading a magazine, not even listening. In this way, my father-in-law and mother-in-law began to stay overnight. They go to the house to change clothes or get something small because it's nearby, but of course they also take a bath at our house, and the laundry that comes out at that time is.
You're going to wash your family's clothes anyway, aren't you?
So they put their own clothes in the washing machine without permission. Washing and drying the underwear of my father-in-law and mother-in-law, who are not even family, and who I don't want to come, is also me. I'm starting to feel physically uncomfortable. Despite my feelings, my in-laws' stay increased day by day. As the number of nights increased, my in-laws' interference began. The most surprising thing for me was when I went shopping and came back.
Hey, you! Are you using this kind of seasoning? I found chicken bouillon too.
My mother-in-law was rummaging through the refrigerator.
It's bad for your health, so I threw it away.
And she said it without any remorse. Then,
if you don't take broth from vegetables or meat, it's not good for your health,
she said. Thrown away things in the refrigerator without permission and told to go buy replacements. And that's right after I came back from shopping. I was speechless at such treatment. However, that wasn't the end of it.
We stay over a lot now, so I rearranged the kitchen to make it easier to use while you're shopping.
She said that. I saw that the position of salt and sugar had changed. The ladle I had hooked on the hook was put in a cardboard box and placed on the shelf.
Isn't this comfortable?
My mother-in-law said with a smug look. It's not a joke. I have to pull out the cardboard box every time and check where everything is. My ease of use and my mother-in-law's ease of use are different. Soon, my mother-in-law started rummaging through the contents of the shopping bag.
Why did you buy cherry tomatoes? Regular tomatoes are fine, aren't they? And what? You bought it for $5? You shouldn't buy cherry tomatoes unless they're $3. You spend money on things like this.
I can't take it anymore. Frequent visits by Luke's family are not a story that can be tolerated normally. Moreover, rummaging through the refrigerator, throwing away things in the house without permission, and changing the layout of the kitchen. Finally, the kitchen was taken over by my mother-in-law, and my feelings were reaching their limit. In the end, I, who had my seasoning thrown away at that time, went shopping again. I couldn't stand it and stopped by my parents' house on the way back from shopping. And I told my real mother all about the evil deeds of my in-laws. At first, I thought I would feel better if I complained. But gradually, I couldn't stand it and tears came out. My mother listened without interrupting and put her hand on my shoulder.
If something like that happens again, come back home.
I nodded while crying. I can't forgive those in-laws anymore. I secretly swore revenge.
They stayed for a week this week too.
Luke started talking after his in-laws left. Finally, the four of us were alone.
From tomorrow, they're going to stay for a month this time.
A month? And they're coming back tomorrow even though they just left? I judged that my mother's, if something like this happens again, came early. Enough already. You'll regret it. I've reached my limit.
What will I regret? I won't. Well, tomorrow's Monday, so I'm going to work. See you.
A response that doesn't understand anything at all came back. Just you wait and see. The next day Luke's family came over. I left the house with my children after seeing Luke off. We headed to my parents' house. When we arrived, my mother handed me the key. I accepted it and gave her the key to my house in return.
Take it easy for a while. You can use anything in the house. It's your old house, after all.
Thank you, Mom.
Well, I'll take over from here. Your father and I will entertain your in-laws over there.
Yes, while my parents are staying with Luke's parents, I'll be spending time with my children in this house where my parents live. Now, I started living in my parents' house. I could relax while watching my children play with toys. My older child is in kindergarten, but the distance between our house and my parents' house is short. There were no problems with commuting or playing with mom friends. Since Luke's family is coming for a month, I'll spend a month here. I'll think of it as if I came to a resort. I bought sweets at a convenience store for the first time in a while and spent my time relaxing in a home cafe mood. It was not a bad month, but the best month. Just when I thought that, Luke called me after just 1 week.
Help me!
What? I expected it, but just 1 week. The plan for a month-long vacation. I'm disappointed that it's been shortened. I wanted them to stay a little longer. I won't help you. It hasn't been a month yet. I replied in a businesslike tone. And who said they wouldn't regret it?
Don't say that. Anyway, can you just listen to me?
His tone was pitiful, and I laughed. But it's not for Luke. I decided to go back for a while for my parents who are fighting for me. When I got home, Luke was crying. What? You're crying even though you said you wouldn't regret it? It was too funny, and I laughed.
Everything is wrong.
It was your carefree head that was wrong. I thought that, but I entered the entrance and went to the living room. In the living room, there are my father, mother, father-in-law, mother-in-law, and Luke. There are not enough chairs, so we are using a computer desk chair and a kitchen step stool. Luke suggested that I sit on the kitchen step stool, but I said, "You sit there. I'm the one who should listen to you," and he gave me the computer desk chair. I sat on it and listened. Luke said,
First of all, I didn't think my mother-in-law and father-in-law would come.
"You said, it's only 2 more people, it's not a big deal. Besides, I was gone, so only 1 more person increased. You said that since the partner's parents are the same as their own parents, they don't have to worry about cleaning or anything, right?" Then my father said in a long voice,
I also think of Luke as my own son.
"Right?" Luke had no choice but to look down. However, the conversation continued.
Even with so many people here, I'm the only one doing laundry.
Luke said. So I looked at my mother-in-law. If her son was having a hard time, shouldn't she help? But my mother-in-law said,
No way! I'm not washing underwear for strangers who aren't even family.
My daughter thought the same thing.
My mother said. I had told my mother that she didn't have to do any laundry, so she didn't help either. As a result, Luke had to do laundry for 5 people. He had to run the washing machine so many times, and the amount of laundry to hang and take in was incredible.
But it's only 1 more person.
My mother laughed. So what about cooking?
Well, that's, since you weren't here, my mother and the others had to do it.
Luke said awkwardly when I asked. Then my mother-in-law shouted.
On her own! This person! She said it is so inconvenient, and she changed the arrangement.
My mother-in-law pointed at my mother.
I heard that you changed the arrangement that my daughter decided. Isn't it easier to hang the ladle?
My mother and mother-in-law argued. Did you do this every day for a week? I asked the 2 of them.
We talked about it.
My mother said triumphantly. I looked into the kitchen and burst out laughing. The kitchen was divided into separate spaces on the left and right. On the right half, ladles were hanging on hooks, and on the left half, they were stored in a box. It seemed that anything that didn't have 2 was added.
The stove was also divided into right and left.
But the water couldn't be divided.
My mother-in-law exclaimed indignantly.
She was standing on the stove for a long time, so it was annoying.
My mother said.
It's obvious that I need to take the broth.
My mother-in-law shouted.
Well, either way is fine. I just thought it was clumsy because I only used chicken bouillon for a moment.
My mother said. Watching this argument, my father said.
This is what identity differences are all about.
My silent father-in-law looked down and remained silent.
Well, we fathers had identity differences too.
My father said.
I wanted to watch a variety show on Sunday afternoon, but this person wanted to watch a sports program.
My father said.
We only have one TV.
My father-in-law finally spoke. This person speaks words other than yes, no, and I see, I thought, feeling strangely moved.
More than anything else.
Luke said, his voice strained.
I couldn't pay for 6 people's living expenses from my salary.
That's right. My mother and I said at the same time. Until now, they haven't paid for food or utilities, and they're just staying here, so it's normal for us to spend money. You were too optimistic to say that it was okay to be lively without understanding that kind of inconvenience. Luke couldn't say anything anymore. So this is my conclusion, I said, taking a piece of paper out of my bag. I asked the company I used to work for before I retired from marriage. They said it was okay to come back, so I don't need to rely on you anymore. Write this. Luke, my mother-in-law, and father-in-law looked at the paper with their eyes wide open.
Huh?
My mother-in-law exclaimed.
Stop it! If you say you're getting divorced over something as trivial as us relatives, my child will die of stress.
My mother-in-law shouted. What a ridiculous argument. Maybe it's because you're overprotective and interfering that things have turned out this way. The impudence and interference of my mother-in-law will never be cured. Even if they stop staying with us this time, it will come out somewhere else. They've already finished by the time they start searching the refrigerator or throwing away seasonings without permission.
Wait a minute. I really think what happened this time was bad.
Luke shouted. You had already ended. You gave permission for them to stay, and you complain about housework too much, I said.
I'm in trouble. I apologize for letting them stay without thinking ahead. I won't let my parents stay anymore. If you want, we can even sever ties here.
Luke said.
What?
My mother-in-law screamed.
What are you talking about? I stayed here because I wanted to be close to you.
My mother-in-law said. I can't stand the condescending attitude of, I stayed here to help you. I declared a severance of relations with my mother-in-law. Then, I took a breath and pushed the paper further in front of Luke. It was a declaration of severance from Luke. You said you wouldn't regret it. Luke shed more tears.
Like you're crying now. Azealia cried a week ago. Don't make a face like you're the only victim now.
My mother gave the final blow. I finally launched a counterattack. In the end, we got divorced. I have custody of the child, and Luke moved out of the house. Luke, my mother-in-law, and father-in-law were apparently estranged due to Luke's declaration of estrangement during that chaotic time. Furthermore, since our parents' homes were close to each other, they moved away because my mother had made the details of this incident known to the neighbors and it became uncomfortable.
My father and mother have gone far away, so they won't come to stay anymore. Please come back.
I received an email from Luke, but I refused it as well. According to the email, Luke had been living with his parents all along and couldn't do housework alone, and couldn't handle life. Well, that's not my business. I got a job at the company I worked for before I got married. It's become a bit of a hobby to stop by the convenience store on the way home from work and buy sweets. I pick up my child, play with them a lot when I get home, and then I eat the sweets I bought at the convenience store while the washing machine is running after the child goes to bed. You need time alone, don't you? I savored the happiness of a solo tea time at night.
How was this story? Please subscribe to the channel as well. See you in the next video.